maintain if we do not get our fiscal house in order. Annual deficits are continuing to rise and will exceed $1 trillion a year, and interest payments on the national debt are projected to double. Interest payments on the national debt are projected to exceed military spending by 2024. The national debt nearly doubled under the prior administration and is now more than $22 trillion. This level of debt is unsustainable and threatens the prosperity and economic freedom of future generations. The President's commitment to fiscal responsibility has been outlined in his previous budgets, and again today, he is requesting more reductions to both discretionary and mandatory spending than any other president in history. Yet each time this President has called for fiscal restraint and spending reform, he has been blatantly ignored. Instead, those opposing to decrease Washington spending have called for massive tax increases as a means to reduce the deficit. However, not only would this punish taxpayers, destroy jobs, and slow America's economic engine, but it also would ignore the reality of our current fiscal situation. Contrary to fearful predictions before the passage of tax reform, revenues are increasing and are in line with 50-year historic averages. The problem is not that Americans are taxed too little, it is that Washington spends too much. This budget is yet another fiscally responsible and common-sense spending plan from President Trump. I look forward to working with members of this committee and Congress and remain hopeful that we can prove to the American people that our government is capable of passing budgets and balancing the budget by prioritizing efficient and effective spending. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to questions. Let me take a moment to explain the process for all the committee members before we start. Each member will have 5 minutes for questions, beginning with myself and then somebody. Following that, we'll alternate questions between the Republicans and the minority. All members who were in attendance when the hearing started will be recognized in order of seniority. For those who arrived after the hearing began, you're on a list in order of arrival. If it's your turn on the list to be recognized but you're not available, we'll move on to the bottom of the list and turn to the next senator on the list to ask questions. With that, I have a few questions. Director Vogt, the President's budget requests a large increase in overseas contingency operations funding to provide a total of $750 billion in defense spending in fiscal year 2020. Can you walk us through the thought process on this approach and what seems to change in the administration's position on use of the overseas contingency operation designation to the fund-based requirements?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. We, as you mentioned, do propose $165 billion into the OCO account. This is the money that we believe is necessary to continue the rebuild of the military in excess of what the current cap level for defense of $576 billion would be, to arrive at a number of $750 billion. When you also factor in $9 billion in military construction funding. Our view is that we need to move away from the types of two-year caps deals that are largely unpaid for, in which we increase spending for non-defense discretionary spending, and the current paradigm is to have a dollar